Howdy, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Texas SignalCast. I'm your host, Joe Desotel, and I'm here with my co-host, Jessica Montoya Coggins. Hello, Jessica.
Hey, Joe.
So this week is still all about redistricting. However, there's been a few curveballs thrown in too, more Trump discussions, and some new announcements, retirements, and things like that. And just a lot of really stupid things being said. I know you talked about before, like it'd be really cool maybe to start talking about awards for just really dumb things people are doing and kind of highlighting some of that. I think this week was a pretty good week for some of that. There's some real contenders here. I think let's just start from the top with Trump. Trump said that ours are not going to vote in 2022 or 2024 unless we basically fix this 2020 election.
I that's an interesting strategy. I guess that's the ultimate dodgeball quote.
I know it feels very like Andy Kaufman. It's like, wait a minute, is this like guy like a parody, or like he really is gonna bring people? He thinks that people are gonna do that. Like, I
Yeah,
love it.
it's a bold strategy, Con.
It's a
Let's see how it works out.
very bold. Yeah.
But this is, I think, this is kind of what Republicans now are facing, especially in many of these states, in states that he won by a landslide. There was actually a story Rachel Maddow promoted about Hood County, the election administrator there, basically being driven out of her post. This is a county that overwhelmingly voted for Trump. It was 81% of the vote. Like, that's huge.
So obviously 19% cheated. So we should fix that.
He was more than that. But so, like, that's kind of where we are now, where essentially the Republican dogma, if you are running as a Republican now, is whether or not you believe the election was stolen. And I guess if you don't, you've been put on notice here.
Yeah, it's wild because they're spending so much time like drawing these maps to secure Republican control, and Trump is out there saying we're not going to vote. So, and then and then what happens if they don't actually show up and Democrats win some of these seats? What are they going to think? Oh, Democrats must have cheated. So it's really crazy, that this is actually happening. But it's not just Trump, right? I mean, it's just all down the line, and Greg Abbott has this pressure on him from Mar-a-Lago, but also from Don Huffines. And he's somebody that before Trump we would have all just like laughed at and made jokes about because it was so silly and so out there, but he's having a real impact on Texas state government. I know we did a story on him on the texassignal.com and sort of about how bad he is and his influence has been. But do you know about this story? This thing happened this week with the Child Protective Services website.
Sure. So just a little bit of background for folks. Don Huffines was a one-term state senator from North Texas. If the name sounds familiar, his family owns a lot of car dealerships. He and his brother also have a real estate company. But when he was in the state legislature, he was one of the most conservative members of the Senate. He authored a number of bills against immigration, against abortion, against a lot of LGBTQ rights. There was a website that was on the Texas Department of Family Protective Services. It was essentially just, basically a hotline for LGBTQ youth that, needed help or resources. And so Huffines did a video on Twitter condemning this, saying that this was indoctrinating children and how dare this exist in Texas. And lo and behold, that website was gone. And he really took a victory lap for that and basically said, I was the one who had the gumption to do this, not, Rhino Greg Abbott, who that's why I'm running against him, because he doesn't have these Texas values. He has had a major impact. I also think that this week, Greg Abbott announced a new executive order against vaccine mandates. If you've heard that one again, let me tell you, this is different. This actually bans any entity in Texas, including a private business, from having a vaccine mandate. And Huffines, again, took credit for that. And I think that was actually something that he rightfully should. Abbott was responding to him when he did that.
It's unbelievable, and there's evidence, direct conversations that are going on because somebody did an information request and found email communications with the Abbott press team to make sure that they saw the press release that was going to go out from the agency when they were basically taking this information off of their website. So there's clear coordination there. And the fact that it is related to a campaign event and a campaign function is really disturbing, but it just highlights the ways in which they actually use government just for personal gain and benefit.
Right. And so, Abbott has, we've talked about him being underwater with voters in Texas on a number of issues, but he is still running in a Republican primary. And even if polling, does sort of show Huffines trailing him, Abbott is clearly running scared, and he's running to the right on that.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to Huffines' website, you'll see a plethora of issues, and it's just like right wing talking points after one after the other. But they're ones that Abbott has basically just taken up, and this is how he's responding.
Yeah, it sounded to me like you said white. I can't even say it. It's a tongue twister. White wing instead of right wing, and I think it's probably more appropriate
Yeah,
for some of the stuff that he's doing. Yeah, and he does have other challengers. I mean, we saw Alan West. I mean, another great candidate for dumbest comment of the week. This guy announced that he did have COVID-19. His wife also had COVID-19. He had to be admitted to the hospital, and he took, of course, every kind of treatment that was offered to him except for the actual vaccine. And then when he finally, was relieved from the hospital, he basically said it just he's doubled down on, not believing in getting the vaccine for himself. And even though his wife had the vaccine and she avoided having to go to the hospital, which is like the perfect example in what we explain to people about why the vaccine is actually important, because it may not, you may not prevent you from getting it, but it keeps you out of the hospital. That hospital bed is so critical right now for people who really need it and who otherwise could not avoid it, when you could clearly avoid it by getting a free shot. He'd rather go sit in a hospital, and all that money and time and expertise that goes into keeping him basically safe and alive so he could make a political point while running for governor.
Right. I do also just want to remind folks that, when people say like, oh, we don't know about the vaccines, that's kind of a lie. We actually really do know about them and how safe and effective they are. What we don't know are a lot of these treatments that people like Alan West were using, the hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. I guess some Republicans were chastising, saying this isn't a horse dewormer. There is technically a human component to that, but again, really not a largely tested thing.
But it's also and it's for certain types of illnesses, or it's not for a virus. It's not for
right, and same for hydroxychloroquine. There are a number
for parasites
of and then for lupus patients, we'll use that. So that actually has been a run on that for a lot of people who do need that. But for something like COVID-19, not necessarily a tested thing.
No, and this is what so they've come all the way from, this was Trump who put out this vaccine and made it happen so fast, and they just come all the way around to now the best way to avoid I guess getting or the best protection against COVID is to actually get COVID, because that's how you get the antibodies. And like, this is what they're saying. I mean, this is what he said. He said, now I have the best protection against COVID, my own antibodies. It's like, dude, you had to actually get it, go be hospitalized and like not die to have those antibodies.
Meanwhile, the vaccine is free. It takes 15 minutes.
It's free. Yeah. And his wife now has antibodies because she got it. She just missed the whole hospital part of it. It's so stupid.
I have seen some corners of the right wing or white wing, I guess, calling it the freedom flu. So
yeah, that's I mean, that's better than the other racist stuff that they were saying, but
So just take care, folks.
I know, and they call us triggered. I mean, they literally like have to change the names of things when they get mad about it. Remind me of freedom fries and all that. Um, but yeah, so this is some of the things that are still going on in the special session that are basically sideshows, right? But the main reason that they're here is for redistricting, and so the House did pass their own version of their maps. And then it looks like for the congressional maps, as you were mentioning, that they are basically going to just pass the Senate version. And again, it just looks like Governor Abbott is not really running the show here. In this case, it looks more like Dan Patrick is running the show here. And so, from my understanding, the House is not going to even consider their own map. They're really just going to consider what the Senate has already passed and may take amendments on the floor. And so it just looks to me like they're all scared and nobody's willing to challenge the powers that be that basically told them, here's what we're doing.
Right. And, we mentioned it about just the lengths they are going, basically ignoring the fact that 95% of the growth of the past 10 years has been from communities of color. These maps are certainly not reflective of that. And it's sad, I guess some folks trying to find a little bit of humor in this. I've seen some up in my neck of the woods, the Dallas carvings, folks trying to come up with different shapes for all of the different districts. So I think we've had a couple of dragons, we had a submarine, and a few other sort of objects that you could sort of find on the map as you see fit.
Yeah, yeah, and one of the other things that came of this are some there've been some members who have been paired. On the Republican side, it's mostly folks who are just not coming back, so they were basically paired with somebody who did plan to come back, so that person can run. I mean, this is very strategic in how they're doing this, basically helping their friends and their colleagues, and themselves ultimately, because you don't want your colleague to run against you. And so they're trying to avoid that on the Democratic side. There were pairings, as you mentioned, on the congressional side. Sheila Jackson Lee and Al Green, two longtime African American representatives, were paired together, and that's in the current form, as you mentioned. So we'll see. I hope that the courts would intervene on that. They may not, but these folks may have to move to continue representing their districts. But as you mentioned, with the growth in the population being 95% people of color, somehow they managed to draw maps that increase the number of white majority districts from like 80 to 83. And it's interesting to me because one of the people that were drawn out of their maps on the Democratic side was James Tallarico, who was one of the first people to come back from DC when they left. And
He
so
actually wrote about that for the Texas Signal. I'll
that's right.
warn folks. I think it's the longest piece we've ever run. It might have clocked about 10,000 words.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes too many words means maybe you should think about what you're really talking about. But like in this particular case, yeah, you know, I think it's interesting because he basically the maps passed at midnight, and then within a few hours he's putting out a statement saying that he was gerrymandered out of his district and he's going to go move into this other district where he grew up and he's going to run. But I found it interesting because I want to read one of these tweets that he put out in this thread, and it says, he's talking about the fact that they did this, and he says, but I'm not mad about that. I'm mad about how they did it. Republicans are trying to get rid of me by dividing the communities of color in my district, by silencing their voice, by robbing them of their power, the people I swore a sacred oath to represent. And I've been trying to square that because, I like him personally. I've never had an issue with him at all, and he's on the right side of the issues, but I'm trying to square that with relocating to a majority minority district when the last few months we've been talking about how 95% of the growth in the state has been people of color, and the map should represent that. And one of the few majority minority districts left in the state, he's going to relocate there to run. And I don't know, I just feel like I find that hard to square with that kind of a statement about silencing voices of people of color.
Well,
So
that'll be one to watch. So
yeah.
for folks, the district that he will be moving to, or says he is moving to, this is one that is now going to be vacated by Celia Israel. She
Mm-hmm.
announced she was not running for reelection. She's has an exploratory committee now for Austin mayor.
Mm-hmm.
But Tallarico, he had a long list of people who have already endorsed him for the seat. Now, I don't think that actually includes anyone who is a voter in the district. Maybe well, actually, I guess that does have Mayor Adler.
Mayor
But
Adler lives downtown, as far as I
oh, so
know.
he's not in the okay. So never
Yeah, I don't
mind.
think he doesn't live in District 50.
Okay, so
No, yeah,
there's
I
no
mean,
one else.
there could be. I don't know everybody on that list, but I can tell you most of the people on that list absolutely do not. Some don't even live in this part of the state. And so I think that's, something people should consider. And after talking to some of those folks on that list, I don't think they realized this was a majority minority district. So I think what happened is what we just talked about. I mean, it happens in both parties. People protect themselves and or their friends, and they want to see their friends come back, and that makes perfect sense. And so I don't think that they really thought much about it. James Tallarico, who everybody likes, says, hey, I got gerrymandered out of my district, I want to run in this other district. People are going to say yeah. And I think that that's a lot of what happened. I don't know, what's going to happen moving forward, but I think to your point that if most of the people on that list don't live in the district, it's really going to be up to the district who they send. So he can have those types of endorsements, which are great if you can get them, certainly. But I think you'll see some more names pop up regardless. I don't think it's going to be a situation where like he announced and so that's it and everybody says, oh, he's our guy. I don't think that's going to happen. So it'll be interesting to see. Travis County, I mean, we don't have a lot of flippable seats, but so our primaries are where that's where the action is. So I think we're going to see
Yeah,
some action.
I think we'll be seeing a lot either on
Yeah.
the both the state house and then also for the
Yeah.
congressional district that opened up there.
Yeah, but probably not on top of the state house. And that's where we're going to go next. The Texas GOP political director made a comment on Twitter because they're just so feeling themselves right now. But he claims to be, this big Christian Catholic conservative guy. And he made a comment on Twitter saying that he wants to replace, his legislative priority is to replace the goddess of liberty who sits at the top of the Capitol holding the Lone Star with a crucifix. A crucifix. That's his legislative priority. So that's the political director for the Texas Republican Party.
Yeah, I guess maybe I have to brush up on my civics, which that's also a whole thing that's been messed up in our state. But I thought we did have a separation of church and state. But I guess poor Lady Liberty,
Oh
she's
man. Yeah.
this isn't the first time that a prominent Republican has gone after her. I don't know if folks remember the former Attorney General John Ashcroft, who also was very conservative, but he objected to. I guess there's a couple of statues in Washington where the statue is topless. So he made it so that there were coverings for a guy. Again, this is just a statue. It's just a piece of art. So yeah, I just feel bad for Lady Liberty. Leave her alone.
I mean, yeah, it's been pretty bad year for her, the last couple. But I just think it's so funny because I went to this guy's page, I went to his Twitter handle, and sure enough, his bio reads Catholic, conservative, and political director, Texas GOP. Opinions of mine are correct. And I'll give you one guess at how many followers he has.
666.
Yes. So I'm not even joking. I'm going to share the screen with you. I saw that and I was like, oh my God, this is too good. I was like, you can't make this up. You can't make this stuff up. This dude who shared this wants to put a crucifix on top of the state capitol, has exactly 666 followers.
That's great.
I mean, it's just little things like that in Texas politics. That's like our silver lining, is that there's just some deep ironies that we know that there has to be something bigger at play here, making this stuff happen. But anyways, speaking of bigger plays, Houston Astros moving to the AL finals. I grew up a Houston Astros fan, and so I'm really excited to see them back in the playoffs doing their thing. I know some people are still mad at them, calling them cheaters.
I wish them well. So I don't have a strong opinion. That being said, I do think nationally it'll be a little hard for folks to muster goodwill for the team. But I wish them well. I do love Mattress Mac. So my understanding is he always has bets that he does for
he
them.
comes through. I mean, he is Houston through and through. For sure. So do you have any sports that you watch at all? Are you
Oh yeah, I tend to watch. I do like basketball. So that's probably the big sport. Every now and then I'll watch football, either college or pro. Last weekend was a great weekend for college football. I mean, you had that stunning game with OU and UT, and then A&M, shocking everyone. So that was was fun.
Yeah, I agree. It was great, and I was obviously was rooting for UT, but God, it's so devastating. I mean,
it was very weird. I was actually in downtown, so that game is played at the old Cotton Bowl here in Dallas, so that's like a big thing for a lot of folks. So I was actually downtown afterwards, and you could sort of see a lot of the UT fans. They had a rough day.
Yeah, a little deflated, right? But it happens at the state fair, right? The Cotton Bowl is at the Texas State Fair. And so you were saying how it's not a thing you do every year, but
it's nice that it's back. Last year, obviously, like many things, it was canceled, and so that was very hard for folks where that's a huge thing. I was just talking with someone who I think she's been there 7 times already. So I believe it goes on until this weekend. It's just a lot of fun things that they do. I remember when I was little, I actually used to love going to the car shows very randomly.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah.
Oh, it was great. And it was just kind of back in the day where like they would have models that would sort of come and like they would talk about their cars, and it felt very glamorous to me. So
yeah, I bet so. We just had goats. I mean, and Ferris wheels. I mean, I look forward to like the funnel cakes. So I think I know the Texas State Fair. So my wife is from Dallas, and so I tell her about the Texas State Fair, Southeast Texas State Fair, which is the number 2 biggest in the state, and she's just like, whatever. Like, if you've never been to the state fair, I have to take you. So we're going to Dallas this weekend. Perhaps maybe she'll take me. I don't know. But one day
it's supposed to be great. It's supposed to be great weather, so you'll
yeah.
Good time.
Maybe we'll make it. Well, thank you for another good episode. I appreciate you being so knowledgeable about all these things, because most of the time I'm like, I read a lot of headlines and you actually know things about them. So appreciate that, and appreciate everybody listening. Make sure to follow along at texassignal.com. We're definitely going to be updating you on the redistricting maps and everything else that's going through the silly season of this 3rd special session, and so we'll be keeping tabs on that. So follow us on social media at Texas Signal, on TikTok, on Instagram, and anywhere you get your podcasts. So thanks again, and until next time.
Bye, guys.